I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing.
Right now, we know that nursing is at a professional crossroad. Whether you're in Canada or the US, it's really important that we start diving into conversations and really seeing some of the fiercest leaders come together. What actually happens when we put the fiercest nursing leaders and the smartest innovators and some of the most dedicated industry partners and patient voices in one room? Well, you get the 2026 Opportunity and Impact Summit. This to me looks like it's more than just a conference. It's a mission to strengthen the nursing workforce and amplify voices that have been silenced for too long. From bedside advocacy to high level policy change, the American Nurses Enterprise is accelerating that change that healthcare desperately needs. I think it's important that we're not passive in this type of work. If we want to see better change in the future, why don't you come and join, help shape it? And that's an invitation that Dr. Katie Boston-Leary is inviting you to do. Now, if you don't know Dr. Boston-Leary, her resume is honestly amazing. She is the Senior Vice President of Equity Engagement at the American Nurses Association and a Fellow of the American Academy of Nursing, and was recently named in 2025 the NBNA's President's Trailblazer Award winner. She's been a CNO, an adjunct professor, and she's also been a 2024 ICN Global Nurse Leaders Institute Scholar. But beyond titles, Dr. Boston-Leary is someone who isn't afraid to get into the grit of why our system needs change and, more importantly, how we can fix it. Today, we're here to talk about her career, but also a massive event that she's spearheading. 2026 Opportunity and Impact Nursing Summit, which is happening February 12th to the 14th. It's about cross-sectional collaboration, bring the innovators and the policymakers to drive real, lasting action. So if you want to move from just surviving the shift to actually thriving in the shift and leading change, you're in the right place. So welcome Dr. Katie Boston-Leary to the Great Nurse Podcast. I'm so honored that you're here. You are a pioneer, an expert, someone I look up to in terms of, all of the work that you've done in relation to nursing and leadership. And it's taken too long to have you come on the podcast. But maybe before we get started, maybe we open with you telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your background, and maybe even what led you to nursing, because I know that it was a little bit of an accidental career.
Yes, it was. Thank you for having me on your platform. Yes, I think everything happens when it's supposed to happen and everything happens for a reason. So I'm just happy that we're finally connecting. But
Yes.
Katie Boston-Leary, I'm the Senior VP of Equity and Engagement at the American Nurses Association, aka the Enterprise, which includes the association, the foundation, and ANCC. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 30 years. The accidental tourist route that I took to nursing came about 30 plus years ago when I wasn't even thinking about healthcare, and someone just said, "Hey, what about this job?" And I took it, and then someone said, "What about this thing that they're offering scholarships? You need to go and check it out." And I did, and I was running late for work, and I went to the shortest line because I had to go back to work, and it was the line for nursing, and I have regretted it ever since. So I've been in progressive leadership roles, and I've been at ANA for about 6 years, and it's been fantastic. It was a leap to go from practice, because that's all I knew, to policy, and it's really been a great transition for me in terms of understanding the practice side, which I continue to still learn because I'm not in it anymore, but how that translates appropriately into policy so that one is informing the other, and the other is not impacting the other in negative ways or non-intended negative ways. So it's been a great marriage, and I've really enjoyed what I do. And now in my role as Senior VP of Equity and Engagement, the equity part is about making sure that we are leveling the field for everyone and meeting them where they are, and not just individuals, but organizations. And for the other part with engagement is really about focusing on workforce and strengthening the nursing workforce. So both feed into each other. I love what I do. And I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, it's such a necessary space in nursing. I think that, seeing that representation, seeing people in leadership roles like you, for me as a Black nurse makes me feel like I could be in these positions too, and that I can also drive systemic change. And I kind of want to back it up a little bit just to kind of maybe find out for you, what was the moment that you said, you know what, I want to apply to this position because I feel that it would be of value for me to be in this position? And was there a calling? What made you realize that you're like, I want to influence nursing in this specific manner?
Well, when I finished, that's a great question. When I finished my doctorate degree, I knew that I wanted to do something along the lines of social change. At the time, I was
Mm,
a chief nursing officer, and I think I was at my second or third hospital working in that capacity. And I just felt like I was this hamster wheel, right? Where I would be in one organization and I'll put all this effort in to build a healthy work environment, build a strong leadership team and workforce, and then another opportunity to present myself and I'm doing the same thing. And it's like I'm starting from scratch every single time. And
mm,
then when you see that the second and third time, you go, why can't we fix this in a broader sense, right? Like, how can
right.
we set up the structures in a way to inform, yes, having policy helps informing structures to really start to look at this as a standard. Some of the things that we continue to do whenever we switch roles. So, and organizations. I started, and I didn't have ANA in my sights actually. I just knew that I wanted to do something along the lines of social change, and I started to uh, do it through my own consulting company. And then the pandemic hit, and a lot of contracts dried up because no one's doing anything at the time. And
Right.
I was going through my emails. And when I was going through my old emails, because I was looking for some noise, it was too quiet for me. And I found an email that a colleague who still works at ANA sent to me and said, in case you know someone. And I looked at the position. I said, oh, that could be me, actually.
It's
This
like, I
job,
could be
this
that somebody.
all looks like it was meant for me. So I applied for it and I got it. And then I turned it down because I was afraid to doubt
Wow.
whether I could make the transition. Yeah, I did.
Wow.
So I turned it down, and a couple months went by, and then we went on lockdown. And I started seeing ANA in the news all the time because we were talking about PPE and all the other challenges that nursing had. And I was like, God, is that a sign that? And it just kept happening. Every morning I wake up, someone from ANA is on the news. And I said, okay, I hear you. So I called months later and I said, is that position still open? And it was. And the rest is history.
Now that is a story because I think to myself that, people might have been in a similar position of you. And I'm kind of wondering, do you think that there was any, with you turning it down because you said you were fearful? I kind of want to dig into that. And I think it's really powerful from hearing someone who's a powerhouse like you to share that vulnerability. Like, I think that's so important. Do you think that, there was any imposter syndrome at play? Or like what was the moment that you're like, you know what? I'm terrified, but then the fact that you jumped in and that all the signs were there.
Yeah, I think it's is setting transition because I felt that
Mm,
practice was all I knew. And it was intimidating to go to work for ANA, like, and I felt that, it would be a lot of cream of the crop, top echelon nurses, and how would I fit in and compete? So I was engaging in a lot of self-doubt and self-rejection, I'll be honest. Not to mention I felt the setting was not gonna be there for me, and I started to convince myself or talk myself out of it by saying that, I would be bored. You know, I'm used to chasing issues that are life and death type of things, situations, right? And you're on
right,
your feet all day, you're walking around, you're getting like no day is the same when you're in practice, healthcare,
right,
delivery. So I felt that if I went to ANA, the way when I interviewed, the way I heard the job, I felt that it would be just one of those armchair type roles where I'm not engaging that much. I'm just writing a bunch of policy and responding to briefs and things like that. And I thought that I would be bored because I felt that I'm used to running around and this is not who I am. Only to find out that it has its own urgencies, but in a different way. Now,
right,
we don't deal with a lot of life or death type situations, even though I can also contradict myself with what I just said because I listened to a sermon where they said that every decision we make in life is a life or death decision, even if not imminently, eventually,
Yep.
yes, right? Our
Yep.
decisions give life, and it could take it away or reduce it or impact the
Yes.
quality of it every day. So that stuck with me. But anyway, yeah, I was just feeling that this was not the environment for me. I'm used practice was all I knew. So now that I'm in it, especially now with so much work and a lot of that's happening in society that has policy implications. Same thing. No 2 days are like very busy. No, I'm not dealing with patients or interfacing with patients, but I interact with nurses all the time, every day. And we are sometimes the ones that step in the gap between policies that could be harmful to nurses and patients. Not to say, to be histrionic, to say that we're the only, but we have a strong voice.
Yeah.
We consider ourselves to be the premier voice for nurses, for all the nation's nurses. And whenever we have calamities and things that happen that catches the attention of people internationally, like the professional degree issue, you then
Yes.
realize our position in the world. Like they see our association and US nurses as the ideal state for a lot of countries around the world. When they see some of the things that happen policy wise, it seems to be like it's taking a step back for us in the profession. They're like scratching their heads, like, what? What's going on over there? You guys were the tower, the
Right.
shiny tower on the hill. How is this happening?
It's true.
That's the reality.
Yeah, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that piece with me. And again, I think it speaks to the fact that, we do have those moments of imposter syndrome. But one of the things I would say too is you probably left out a lot in terms of your career trajectory that would set you up perfectly for that role. Like we discussed at the top of the episode, we're meeting this time to have this conversation, and it was probably time for you to be in that role. You saw the signs every time coming up on the news saying like, Katie, you need to be here. And I'm so glad that you are in that role, because I think that you are perfect to be in that position.
Oh my
Tell me a
goodness.
little bit about the work that you do at the ANA.
So, I told you a little bit about my role as Senior VP of Equity and Engagement, and the equity side is really about the leveling that we need to have and making sure that every nurse feels seen, supported, and safe, and to do away with some of the old thinking that nursing is only reserved for certain people.
Mm,
And even though it's not something that's overtly said, there are covert things that happen starting from prior to entering nursing programs to when you're in the program to when you get hired to when like there are certain little things of gatekeeping that happen that you pick up along the way that you never pay attention to until you're sitting in my seat and you go, oh, it's not just in that one place, it's everywhere, right? So,
right.
I can relate to the fact that, to your point about the preparation that happens over time for the positions and places that you're in, you're right, you never know. And over time, when you look back and reflect, you go, yeah, I actually was being prepared for this and I had no idea. I remember when I applied to nursing school, how rigorous my interview was compared to someone that I spoken with, um, was not a person of color in terms of the interview that she had. I
Mm,
remember being in the program, seeing that it was just a small group of Black nurses and brown nurses in the program. And over time, as the program went on, the numbers continued to drop. I remember when I was trying to get a preceptorship to the OR because I knew I wanted to be an OR nurse. I had an instructor who I thought saw me that refused to sign my form.
wow.
And when I asked her why, she said, let's just say I don't see you doing this. And she never told me what she saw me doing. And that sat on my chest for years. I really didn't equate it to anything. I just thought that, she doesn't get me. She doesn't see me. My mother told me I was special. I had sheets on my bed that said to know me is to love me or to love me is to know me. Maybe it's her, but then you realize it's a systemic issue.
Mm,
So when you go through life and you see all these things and you get in this position, you kind of see your role as, okay, we're going to disrupt all those things. We're going to focus on
Yeah.
structural impediments to people advancing, not only getting into the profession, but advancing as well. We're going to look at some of the inequities that happens within systems where in certain communities, there's a lot of lack compared to others that relatively don't have a lot of the struggles that some organizations do have. And how do we
Right.
make sure that talent is really being dispersed everywhere and nurses do feel no matter who you are seen for what you bring to the table and there aren't any stereotypes about the fact that you probably went to a less than college to get into nursing and you have to prove yourself all the time. So that's kind of my role initially was to try to uncover that. Now we've shifted heavily and really boldly into how we actually disrupt these structures. How do we break down these structural barriers? How do we create planes of possibility? So that's pretty much the equity side of my role. And that feeds into workforce because I strongly believe that we can actually solidify and strengthen the nursing workforce by building in diversity, making sure everyone feels seen, and the relationship
Mm.
to your employer and to the profession is not transactional. It's really about purpose, and also making sure that we understand for this workforce, even as a nursing body, we have our own issues to contend with because nursing is
Mm.
predominantly female. And because of that, you have to think that some of the policies that we've been trying to put forward, particularly the one that we're dealing with now with the professional degree issue, has a lot to do with the fact that it's seen as a predominantly female profession.
Yeah, no, I think that you hit the nail on the head with a lot of those different aspects, and I think that, it's important that that work is being done, particularly during this this time in the world. I don't even know what to really call it because it is so peculiar, to me, and again,
Yeah.
we talk about history repeating itself, and it seems like we're kind of going through one of those situations again where we've seen some of these actions, and I'd kinda wanna say to you practically, with certain things that are going on with the administration, bans on DEI, and, even using that language surrounding equity, like, what does that practically look like right now for the NA? And I also just wanna comment, that nurse that looked at you and said that you did not deserve to be in that space, I just wanna flick her in the nose because, I think many of us have had those experiences.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that, that is one of the things that we are looking at and we are having those conversations to unpack the fact that, there are people in our profession that believe that we shouldn't be in those spaces. But it doesn't matter. We're going to take up those spaces, whether they want us to be in there or not. And I see that's some of the work that you're doing. Anyways, circling back, because I just was so frustrated when I heard that. Just circling back. So what does that practically look like? What does equity and the work that you're doing right now look like in this time? Because it's just, like I said, I don't even have the right word to describe it. It's not just odd. It's just like, it's so maybe chaotic is probably the best way to describe it because this work is needed. What does it practically look like right now, boots on the ground with A&A? Like how does that work? What does the deliverable look like?
You know, I'm going to go back to your question about this time that we're in and how we describe it. And I, I, I feel comfortable. I feel better. It's kind of like when something's wrong with you, you really feel that until you know exactly what it is and there's a name for it, you're not going to rest. It's uneasy, and I think that goes along with what's happening in the world today. I heard this saying that
Mm.
if you name it, you can tame it. Like, how do we put our finger on how we call this time that we're in? And the closest thing that I can use, a concept that I can use to determine this time, to define this time, which resonated for me, was about the fact that we're in a time of polycrisis and permacrisis,
Mhm.
where permacrisis is we're always in crisis, and polycrisis is there are a number of crises that lay on top of each other. All the past years or generations or decades when there's been a crisis like the Depression area and things like that, there's just this one and it's running. And
Yeah.
then there's some many things within it, There aren't any major crises that lay on top of it until it's done. And the time that we're in, it's like one major crisis over another, right? So that's a polycrisis piece. And then seems like we're always in crisis. So that's helped me with the definition or defining the times that we're in so I can deal with it in my head.
I think it's a space that we have to navigate again because, we can't shy away from racism. We can't shy away from, the inequities that we see. We can't shy away from how policies impact the people that we are trying to look after, or even, like you said, boiling it down to even the workforce, right? Working with nurses and nurses amongst all of this, we are, like you said, we are in the gap in terms of where all of this is happening. And I know that ANA released a landmark racial reckoning statement acknowledging its own history in relation to systemic racism. And I know you were someone who helped lead this. What was the most uncomfortable, unnecessary part in relation to this work that you did?
Well, I would say the most critical piece was making it believable. Because there at the time, especially after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of these performative acts that were happening, and we had to make sure that our work was not seen as performative. Not to mention, I'm an employee, but I also have a personal identity as well. So I had to
Yes.
contend with both of those, and I had a community that I had to answer to if this was going to be performative. And sometimes things can be performative unintentionally as well, right?
Yes.
But people don't care about that. If it's performative and you don't put actions behind your words, it's what it
Yep.
is, and people would react to that. So I had this double duty that I had to deal with as an A&A employee and also as a stakeholder to say, this has to be right. We can't make a mistake. We have to get it right the first time. I remember one of the things we had to contend with when we started working on this, and I'll never forget, I was new to A&A, probably within my first year, and we had the report and we were going to release the statement. We had, at the time, that person along with the organization, they've moved on to other things. But at the time, there was a suggestion that, well, we'll put the statement out and we'll turn the comments off on our social media. And I said, why? And said, well, because, we're going to get a reaction, da, da, da. I said, but are we worried about more about the people that are going to not like this and not think about the people that would? Like, what about them? Like, how about the people who've been waiting for this for years, right? And
Yep.
they're probably even close to their last breath that they're going to appreciate this. Like, and
Right.
don't we want to hear from them too? We're going to shut down all of that because we're afraid of the backlash that we're going to get? What group are we catering to? So we had to have those hard conversations, and we had this system where we talked to the hive. We had hive discussions where it was just blunt, bold conversations. Be brave, say what you had to say. And that was helpful for us as a group because we were able to confront each other when we felt that someone was a little bit out of step with their thinking, using the wrong wordings for certain descriptors for certain things. So that really helped our process. And the key thing was fidelity and transparency and truth and real reconciliation was very important in this work. And I think we're about there. And by the way, with the statement, we have the recommendations that minority ethnic associations that we gathered for a think tank have told us these are the things you need to do. And it's my role to work through those things. The list was approved by the board, and now we have to execute. Yeah, and now we're vetting them and putting them in action. So that's the carryover from the racial reckoning statement. There's an action plan for us to execute on the back end of the statement.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think people have to understand that some of these conversations are going to be uncomfortable. And I always say this when we're having, and I almost like to frame it as courageous conversations because, it's okay to feel discomfort. And I think that's where people should examine why they might be feeling discomfort. And for me, you hit the nail on the head when you're saying that, we can't close the comments off because this is for certain groups of individuals. They need this. This is about healing. And that's what I think about sometimes when I'm having these conversations about who I'm having them for, because sometimes they are deliberate and they have to be deliberate.
Yeah.
And we can't always continue to worry about, what this person might think when we are talking to a certain group or a certain ethnic group in relation to harm that has befallen on them or historical harm. We have to just call it as what it is. And I like the fact that you were having these beehive conversations. I think it's important that we speak courageously and we speak openly and honestly about, how these things are affecting us. And again, there's going to have to be, push with those types of conversations. And I'm glad that you're in the space to do that. I want to move to talking a little bit about some of the equity within nursing. So you have a summit coming up.
Yes.
So the Equity in Nursing, a summit for change. Tell me a little bit about this summit.
Our new title that we revised because of what I just mentioned in terms of our progression. And
Yes.
also, we want to make sure that words don't get in the way of people attending our summit because of what's being put out there administratively that a number of institutions have adopted. Actually, we've renamed it the Opportunity and Impact in Nursing Summit.
Yes, that's correct.
Same
Yeah.
thread, but it really is about pointing our eyes forward to really focus on the solutions versus solely focus on the problem. So focusing on the problem. So the Opportunity and Impact in Nursing Summit is going to be February 12th through the 14th, the evening of February 12th through the 14th. And we have a power-packed agenda where the first night we're going to have Mercedes Wells, who's the mother that grabbed national headlines, that ended up delivering her baby on the side of the road because she was discharged in active labor. She'll be flanked by two very highly esteemed nurse midwives, Dr. Kurth and Dr. Canty, they'll have a fireside chat. That session is sponsored by the National Black Nurses Association. We also have awards that we're going to be giving out, Health Equity Impact Awards. And one of the awards that we're giving out is for Maryland Governor Westmore. We also have the third part of that night is a musical performance by a nurse, Tad Warku, who's also a son of immigrants, and he's going to share his story. Day 2 is a full day, and we have some public officials that will be stopping by to give us some words of encouragement and wisdom. And then we go into some sessions. We have a fireside chat with our CEO and Karenza Townsend, who was also on CBS in 60 Minutes, where she talks about how she willed her organization to build a hospital in an underserved community in Louisville, Kentucky. We have a major event. It's going to be a 2-hour live reenactment of writings from 1793, when Black nurses at the time were cajoled into staying back to care for sick patients that were dying of yellow fever, and they were demonized anyway, and they were sought out because they believed that the color of their skin deemed them impervious to contracting any disease. And this will be performed by real actors. Frankie Faison,
Wow.
who is in Coming to America, the landlord. We're going to have Arliss Howard. He was in Jurassic Park. I mean, it's just a power-packed lineup. And then it will be followed by a panel with some of our giants in nursing, Dr. Ernest Grant, Dr. Beverly Malone, Dr. Deborah Toney, Dr. Alicia Georges, Dr. Ken White. They're going to be having discussions about what they just saw, the live reenactment, and it's going to be moderated by Margot Hughes Cawthorns. Again, that's the taste. We have Liz Zhang that's coming, that's just released a book this month, and she's going to talk about her book called Fixing Fairness. We have Joan C. Williams that's just going to talk about interrupting bias, and she has tools about how to interrupt bias. We have the U.S. Public Health Service Chief Nurse, Jennifer Moon, that's speaking. The list goes on and on and on. And we're also going to be giving, for the first time, an award to a nurse in Uganda who climbs a 1,000-step ladder to inoculate patients in a far-to-reach area. And she wears rubber boots and a skirt to climb up this ladder, even with mudslides and everything. And I'm actually going to be up tomorrow at 3 a.m. recording her receiving her award because of the time difference, and interviewing her on Zoom, which will play at the event. So yeah, so much happening. And then the final day, we have these talks that were given by a lot of folks in nursing, a lot of nurses that will talk about their solutions to addressing a lot of the issues that we face, workforce issues, creating ways for people to get their fellowship because they're doing work as a diverse nurse and talk about workplace violence and working with state's attorneys. Like there's so many great talks that we have. One of the presenters actually has asked for a piano. She wants to deliver
Oh, wow.
her talk through song. And we're doing all these in 20 minutes so we can get as much in. And we've seen the model with TED, right? Like people can really get
Right.
it, all of their stuff out. It doesn't have to take an hour. So everyone's
Yep.
excited and we're all going to wear red on the last day of the summit because it's Valentine's Day. And it's also going to be a show of solidarity. So excited. There's so much more I could tell you about the programming that we've done, but we only have so much time. And this is one of those things that I've told people: you come, buy your ticket, money guaranteed. It'll be money well spent. You're going to leave forever changed when you come to this. And I did not say that about the first summit, but I can surely say that with this one.
It sounds like there's so many powerful individuals and I think it's also the storytelling, right? I think there's so much that we can learn from the various different voices that are going to come through. Mercedes Wells, I think just her story. And again, it was highly publicized, but again, it showed that gap, right? It showed the
Yeah.
fact that there are areas that we need to work on as nurses, and that we might be able to support and make changes in policy through that, even though it was a really horrible situation. And I'm glad that it turned out good for her.
Yes.
And then, just hearing about the various different performances, it sounds like an amazing opportunity for nurses to join and attend and learn about, how they can provide opportunities and impact, and how they can also innovate through the work that ANA is doing. So it sounds great. I wish I could be there.
I wish you could
Maybe
too.
another time.
Next year, we'll get
Maybe
you
another
next year.
time. Next year. Yes, for sure. And I think that in terms of just the time, if you were standing in front of a class of new nurses and new grads that are entering the system, that are still, grappling with some of the challenges that they're seeing, maybe they're racialized, maybe they feel like they don't fit in the nursing world, what is one piece of advice that you might give them to ensure that they can continue and survive the system and maybe even eventually be a leader in it?
Great question, and so much to unpack there. So I'm going to start with the end and say, what we want for every nurse, including the ones that are new to the profession. I know it's hard, but I think we should have a vision for ourselves in terms of what we want is not just for us to survive, but to thrive.
Yes.
And thriving comes by staying true to yourself, understanding your code of ethics, being open to learn, being comfortable with yourself and who you are and what you do so you can challenge systems, because we really need to do more of that, which
Mm,
entails challenging leaders, because we do have leaders that are holding the system to in the traditional sense in terms of who should be in it and who
mm,
should get what. And also, finally, and most importantly, taking care of ourselves. Like, we have to put down the impression that we sacrifice ourselves to be amazing nurses. On and I really do believe that, and I think we're doing a lot better than we have in the past, but we still have work to do.
yeah.
Where we believe that we can't be the best mom, the best wife, the best husband, the best father, the best uncle, and daughter, son, what have you, while I'm over here being an amazing nurse.
Right.
I really do believe that thriving entails us believing and working towards being both. And I remember early in my career, I sacrificed a lot with my son
Mm.
because I felt that that was needed for me to advance. I can't tell you, and I'm being very vulnerable here in this talk, and I think you're doing this to me, but I can't remember for my son during his formative years, except for a couple of times on weekends, us having a real sit down dinner. It was always, and that was during the time that I was, cut my teeth as a manager.
Mm.
And my excuse was, well, I'm working on this, so he's going to be okay. We're just going to go get some nuggets and he's going to be fine. And I'm going to be working and I'll just put in front of the TV. And I did better with my daughter who came 10 years later, but it still haunts me that I didn't give him a better childhood, and I was a better mother towards him because I felt that, that could wait. I got to work on this first. So I really do believe thriving is believing that we can do both and forgiving ourselves when we have moments of relapse, moments of forgetfulness, and just have faith that, okay, I'm going to make it better tomorrow. I'm going to make it better the next hour and things like that. So long-winded, but that's the advice that I'll give.
I think you're way too hard on yourself, Katie. And I understand what you're saying, because I remember with my twins, I delivered them in 2011, and I went straight back to doing my master's degree because I was just like, this is the best thing, and I have to make sure that I'm in a leadership role so I can provide for them. And then feeling like you're missing out on various elements, and I bet you, your son would probably be like, "You're of course an amazing mom," and
He
I
says
think
that, and he's
I think
30 years
sometimes
old.
we were so hard on ourselves.
I know, but still,
And
I think there's more that I could, you know what I mean? It's just,
I feel I definitely feel you. That it's
and
just like you.
yeah, but he's a great kid, and it's a matter. He's a grown man now. He's 30 years old, and he's a dentist in Greensboro.
You only look like 25. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and he turned out great in spite of me and my shortcomings. But that's what I want people to take away, right? Like, I want people to learn from my hard lessons and realize that. And I think that is becoming the thing, right? You don't have to take the phone and come in on your day off and things like that. Like, it's okay for you to take time off and take care of your family.
I think that's such an important message. And again, it's just that other aspect of knowing that, nursing will always be there. And I've said this to nurses too, at the end of the day, you have many different roles that you're taking on, and that job in 2 weeks after you leave, they'll replace you. And, again, I'm still telling you not to be so hard on yourself, but yes, to recognize the fact that nursing is a profession. And at the end of the day, we are so much more than just one different thing. We hold so many and wear so many different hats. And to just remember at the end of the day that we are people too, and we have feelings and emotions, and we have to take care of ourselves. I remember my doctor saying to me, Amie, if you don't take care of yourself, no one else will. And she's right. And that's why I have to take care of my blood pressure. I have to make sure I'm here for my 4 kids. So even those days where I'm feeling like I got to grind and I got to keep going, I do consciously take time to pause and give myself some rest because it's important. So with that, before we go, is there anything that we missed that we didn't touch on that you'd like to touch on in these last moments?
No, I just please register for the summit. We'll love to see you. It's only maybe 2 weeks away, and we have discounts for students. We have general discounts for friends of ANA. Just by sending me an email, automatically you're a friend, and you get a 10% discount. So we have a lot of ways for people, because in the spirit of equity, we want to make the summit accessible to everybody. So we have a lot of nursing students there. It's not just for nurses, not for people who are well steeped. It's for everyone, even if you're not a nurse.
Okay.
There are a lot of things that will appeal.
All right.
Love to see you.
I think it will appeal to a lot of individuals. I really, truly do. So with that, thank you so much, Dr. Katie Boston-Leary, for coming on the Green Nurse podcast. Such an amazing conversation. We have to have more. I'm sure there's more work that you're doing. I'd like to continue to stay in touch and to hear some of the things that you're doing. And yes, we got to get people to get out to that summit.
Please. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your story and wisdom and experience with me.
Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses, Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amie Archibald-Varley. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much, and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.